All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of David's Saturday Night Sitback. Tonight, I am grateful and excited to have Keita Adams sitting across from me. She is a queer matchmaker and dating coach. She is the go-to LGBTQ relationship coach and speaker here in Austin, Texas. She believes in the importance of relationships and wants to redefine what it means to connect, not just romantically, but even between parents, their children, employers, everyone in your life. Keita has her bachelor's in kinesiology and psychology from the University of North Texas, has been working, according to her LinkedIn anyways, as a relationship coach for about 5 years and a matchmaker for a little over 2 years. She is also the host of Queer Connections, a podcast where they talk about everything from astrology, dating, to sex and pleasure. She wants to help you take your relationships deeper. So if that's been something that you want to do, make sure to go check it out on any platforms you watch or listen to podcasts. And if you like it, support her by subscribing to the channel and leaving a 5-star review. Today, I'm a little terrified for the first time since I started recording this podcast because we are here to talk all things dating in 2023, relationships, and we will probably dive into my own dating life a little bit. And I can't wait to see where this episode goes. Keita, welcome to your episode of DSNSB.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me. I love the intro, by the way.
Oh,
and
good.
Don't be terrified. It's going to be good. It's going to be good. I promise it's going to be impactful. And I'm direct, but I'm also nice. And so, yeah, it's going to be good.
Okay,
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we're going to jump right into it. Usually I fluff these things up and we talk for 3 hours, but we're on a time crunch today. So I guess my first question I wanted to ask you, is as a recruiter, when I am going to find people, it's pretty easy because we can define all right, they need to be licensed as a CPA. They need to have been doing tax for 3, 4, 5 years. And I can go find that person, but it's not, as I was getting ready for today, I'm like, it's not like that in dating.
Yeah.
I can't just tell you oh, I want a guy who's 6 foot tall and has blonde hair. I don't feel like it works, and it would be an intimidating career to get into. So before we get into the specifics, I was wondering why matchmaking, and before you got into it, were you ever nervous about am I going to be good at this, or just did you have any reservations on acting on it?
Yeah, absolutely not. I tell people all the time that I've been thinking about love and relationships and what makes these things work since I was a kid. Unfortunately, my parents divorced when I was 5, and I watched the adults in my relationship or in my life not have good relationships. And so I was like, I'm going to be different. And then I wasn't. And then I was repeating the same mistakes over and over and over again. And so, after a really terrible breakup, I decided that I was already coaching people part-time. But when I was going through my own healing, I couldn't find anybody that could help me navigate through that. It was kind of the same thing of you go out there and date, and it's not looking for a job or even finding friends is completely different. And so I wanted to be the one, especially for queer people because we have other layers, but I wanted to be the one. I have been a coach. People have asked me for advice before. And so I went in knowing heck yeah, I can do this. And fun fact, my friend that did the astrology episode with me on my podcast, she actually read my chart, and it's in my chart for me to be a matchmaker and a connector of some sort. So I was never I was nervous, but there was never a doubt in my mind that this is the thing that I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be coaching people around love and around relationships, and also providing a way for them to connect and find quality people.
I love that for you. So since you've been doing it, while it is a job and it brings in money, I'm assuming based off what you just said, you're probably having the most fun, also feeling very fulfilled, and it's doing all the things for you.
Yes, it really is. Now, there's definitely some frustrations because you got to get people out of their comfort zone a little bit, and this process, matchmaking, date coaching, is completely different, and so it brings up things in people, and so you have to I have to deal with that, but I love it when, on the other side of it, people can find their person. Whether they're 30, whether they're 68, I've worked with all kinds of people, and as long as they're in it and they're committed and they're willing to be coached and they're willing to make adjustments, it's a pretty fulfilling freaking thing to be a part of. So
I watched a few of your Instagram videos, I read through your website, and that was something that I caught on to. That was a common theme, was you're going to have to sort of push and challenge yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
David going into this is not going to be the same David coming out of this.
Nope.
So if I'm just going to be resisting everything that you're coaching me on, I probably wouldn't be the ideal client. So I really need to have an open mind that you're going to potentially ask me to do things that I might not feel comfortable doing. But if I say, yes, I will do those, then I would be a good client for you.
Absolutely. Like, I want people that are at least going to do what I call try it on. Like, we'll try it on and see how it works, and be willing to just be coachable and be willing to unlearn things and then relearn things. You know, if you're one of those people that are like, whatever, I'll try it, no matter how quirky it is, I'll try it, then you are the perfect person for me and a perfect client for me.
So let me start with a very broad question for you.
Okay.
How do you feel about just dating in 2023 and what it looks like?
Man, so let me, there's a lot of things, okay?
That's a very loaded question.
It's so loaded because I'm like, I just want to people. Like, I think that we're making it harder than it really has to be, but I also understand that we don't necessarily have the skills and tools to go out there and really find the partner that we want to find, because there's a lot of things that are in the way. As far as being able to connect with other people, super easy. I think COVID and lockdown restricted us a little bit, and we're all very comfortable and peaceful with ourselves now. So we're like, I have to go outside to meet people. And it's like, yes, or you can get on a dating app and things like that. So I think being able to find somebody, super easy. The connection part is what we're missing. The clarity part about knowing what we want in relationships, that's the thing that's missing. And so that's what makes it difficult to date in 2023. And I also think we're in this aspect too, where we're breaking down what traditional relationships look like. You know, more people are poly or non-monogamous. And so we're, people that are monogamous, we're clashing with that. And so I think we have to be open to what 2023 has to offer, and understand it's not going to be the same. It can't be the same as it was before, just because I think overall as people, we are not the same.
Yeah. So when I moved here, I've only been in Austin since December 27th of last year.
Okay.
So it's been under a year.
Yep.
And I do not like being lonely. So
Okay.
I went on a mission and said, every day that I leave the house, whether it's at the grocery store or more commonly the dog park or the gym, I am going to meet one person. I'm going to force an encounter.
Yes.
And somewhere between like May and August, I stopped doing this for two reasons. One, I got really, call it luck or call it just hard work of forcing myself to do that. I already have a very nice circle of friends and people that I've already fallen in love with, and they're just wonderful human beings. So I think that was part of it, is I would see, I now can go in the gym and I have 11 or 12, 13 conversations. So it's almost like I need to stop meeting people so I can get a daily workout in.
It's too much, yeah.
But then you switch to the relationship front, and I think we'll have to talk about, I'm sure you'll have questions in Austin and pre-Austin differently, because before Austin, I probably tried to date the traditional way. I was on Tinder, Grindr.
Yep.
Those were the main two, but I'm sure, I was on all of them at some point. But when I got to Austin, I thought, I really want to switch things up, and I want to meet whoever this is organically, whether it's someone that my buddy Tom introduces to me or someone in the grocery store. So I've done something about 8 to 12 times that's been terrifying, where if I find a man attractive at H-E-B or the dog park, wherever, I'll walk up to him. And the line I've been using is, hey man, do you happen to be single and into dudes?
Okay.
And so far, all of the 8 to 12 encounters, very positive. All of them were very flattered that I came up to and asked them. One guy was even like, I could never do that. So like, kudos to you for being willing to do this.
Absolutely.
So fortunately, I've been really lucky that none of them have reacted negatively. But now I will just freely admit that there are some days I'm very lonely, and I would love to share my life, the podcast, and just like go to bed with someone and have someone here with me.
Yeah.
And and so by trying to do this organic thing, like I haven't gone on a date in 9 months. I haven't had sex in like over a year. So I'm just like,
Let's change that, everybody.
so I'll just stop there and,
Yeah.
and turn it over to you for a second. And why, do you think I have the ability to connect with humans in a friendly relationship, but I can't really seem to get myself on a date or a boyfriend?
Yeah, let me ask you a question. So those people that you were meeting like at the gym, were you just meeting them to meet them, or were you meeting them for romantic purposes?
So the ones I asked the question to, it was from romantic purposes.
Okay, got you. And they were all just like straight?
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the thing. You have to keep doing that, but I would hone it down a little bit, right? Because it's great that you go out and that you're meeting people and all that, because that tells, universe, spirit, whatever. It just puts the energy out there of like, I am out here to meet people and I'm going to take whatever actions that I need to take. And I tell people it's not ever really sometimes about the person that you're talking to, because if you're doing this in public, like at the gym, Starbucks, whatever, you never know who's sitting in the corner watching you, right? You never know who'd be like, that was so brave that you did that. Sucks you didn't come up to me, but now I'm coming up to you. Like, you just never know who's actually watching you do these things, okay? So I would say you have to keep going. But then you want to hone down those, like where you're actually doing those things, right? Mm-hmm. So what you're doing is what I call double time. You're taking what you're doing in your everyday life and you're making connections and you're talking to people. But when you're going on the romantic front, it's like, where specifically do you want to connect with like-minded people? So what do you enjoy doing? Where do you go? Where do you know that people are going to be single? And then you take that same approach of being like, hey, I saw you really interested. Just want to know if you're interested and available, like in that way, right? And if you're into dudes. So you want to hone in the romantic part. So where are you meeting people right now?
It's very limited. It's HEB, coffee shops, the gym, or the dog park.
Okay. What do you like to do?
I like to podcast.
Okay.
I like to work out. I like to walk my dog.
Okay.
I like to kayak. I like to read.
Okay.
I love listening to podcasts, and I love playing board games.
Okay, great. So where are you going to play board games, right? Like, is there a group that you go into? I know, like, one of my friends likes to play board games, and so I think there's some tavern that does like a board game night. So she'll go to that. So I would recommend like you going to that. I would recommend like looking for a book club. If you can find a very queer specific book club, then doing more of those things. So if you like to kayak, right? Like, is there like a bunch of queer people that like to kayak as well? So you want to take those things and start to be really specific about where you're meeting people and the things that you like to do, because not only are you going to make connections with new people, you'll also in that space will be like, hey, I'm single and I'm looking. And when they come to invite somebody to do that event with you, at least you know they're single and that you like to do this one particular thing together. So that's two things that you have versus if you're just finding somebody on a dating app or just like talking to somebody at the gym. Like, you don't really know. So you want to do the things that you enjoy doing, because when you're doing that, you look confident because you're happy while you're doing it. Yep. And confidence is always sexy. And that in and of itself will bring people to you instead of you constantly having to go to other people.
I like that. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's one step. So figure out what you want to do and go do it.
Yeah.
Especially in a town like Austin. I'm sure there's a ton of
things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can do meetups. Like, I mean, there's all kinds of like bingo nights. There's all kinds of things that you can do. It really is two things. You want to break down your, what I call attraction venues. So the first level is going to be basically what you're doing is public levels. You're probably not going to find anybody there, but at least the energy is like, hey, I'm out here. Level 2 is going to be single specifics places, so dating apps, or it'll be like the bars and clubs, even though we hate going to those or we don't want to go to those. At least you know, I guess for the most part, that somebody's going to be single. But you really want to focus on levels 3 and 4. Level 3 is going to be birds of a feather flock together. That's going to be your interest. It's going to be the things that you enjoy doing, like the board games, clubs that you can join and join all that. Then you're going to have level 4, which is going to be about your values and your passions. So if you like to volunteer, it's going to be in level 4. You like to podcast, so that's probably going to be in level 4. If you can find some type of, I don't know, podcasting group, club, something of that nature, if you can get really specific in that. This is also where a lot of spiritual and religious, where you can find that connection. Or I like to do a lot of personal development in a seminar. So if I was single, I would be looking for someone in that aspect because the language is the same. So you want to look at those attraction venues and begin to break those down. Then when you have those down, you want to take what I call the event matrix. And Logan Ury talks about this in her book, How to Not Die Alone. And you want to map those. You want to find events that are going to be in relationship to your interests and to your values. And you want to map them on the scale of what you will enjoy and then your chance, or how you will enjoy it, and then your chances of meeting someone, right? So if you're going to a movie premiere, you'll probably enjoy that, but your chances of meeting someone is going to be low. But you still want to plot it, right? And so you want to plot it on this matrix, and I'll send it to you if you want to show people, because I know it's hard because people can't see it. But the vertical line is going to be whether you enjoy it, and the horizontal line is going to be whether you're going to have the opportunity to meet someone and talk to people. So when you start to plot these events on it, then you just pick one and you go. And you want to challenge yourself on the ones that you're like, I'm not sure if I will enjoy it, but it'll give you an opportunity to meet people. It's probably where bars and clubs come in, because a lot of people don't like going to that, but you do have to put yourself in that space every now and then.
I was thinking about that as just today, that I haven't gone to the bars and any of the gay-friendly bars and clubs in Austin yet, because the story I'm telling myself is that hasn't been my scene for 7, 8, 9 years.
Yeah.
So if I meet someone there and then they do agree to go on a date and then find out I will never be in that space again, like, is that going to be some level of disappointment for them? And I'm probably overanalyzing it, but just between like the noise, the crowds, and the fact that I don't get enjoyment out of being blackout drunk in a large group of people. You know, I'm not 24 anymore. You know, it used to be super fun. But that part of my life is just beyond me. But for someone like myself, you still think that like maybe once a month, once a quarter, whatever the frickin' cadence is, I should be making an appearance there. Yeah.
I would definitely say, you know, once a month, something like that, go. But then like also make it very clear if someone's like, hey, want to go on a date with you? Like, that was a fluke. Like, I do not go to those places often. And then they get to decide whether it's going to be a deal breaker for them, you know, and as long as, you know, you have kind of freedom, like there are things that people can do with other people. And it doesn't have to be this like make or break, right? Like, so if you don't want to go to the bars and clubs and they do, one, you have to decide, is that going to be a big deal for you if they're going all the time? Same for them. They have to decide that. And then if it's not going to be a big deal, if you're like, hey, peace out, you can go, I'm going to be sitting here and chilling, that's okay. Right. Because we're not looking for one person to be our everything. We have to use our circle. We have to use our support system for other things, right? So like, I like to work out. My wife doesn't like to work out, but I have friends that I can work out with, that can go to the gym with, I can do that. And so when we can get to the point of like, this is the support and the relationship that I want with my partner, and they don't have to do every single thing, then it takes off a little bit of pressure of having this 100% compatibility.
I love that. And it's funny because just a couple weeks ago, one of my friends found out what water sports is. and he asked me if I was into it. And I said no. And he was like, so would it be a deal breaker for you? And I said, it really depends on the guy, because if I'm in love with him, that's a pretty low barrier to entry. And for those who don't know, what I mean is like, if he's attractive and he makes me laugh and he's checking off all these boxes, and then he says, hey, can you get in the bathtub? I'm going to pee on you. Like, I'm not going to say no. I mean, like, whatever, like, do it. That's fine.
Yes.
So sorry if that's TMI, but you know, you should know what water sports is, everyone.
Right.
So I love that point that it's you have to just know what are going to be your deal breakers and what you have some give and take on.
Yeah. And I think people, the biggest mistake that people make when they're dating and they're thinking about going out there and finding someone is they're trying to create the person, and you can't create the person. You have to create the relationship. And so when I work with people, they bring me this list, and I'm like, those are really cool list of traits, but like, people can show up when they want to, how they want to, whenever they choose to. And we see it all the time when you see somebody that like you just dated, or you hear a friend say, well, they didn't do that with me. Well, that's because for whatever reason they chose not to with you, and they're choosing to with this particular person because there's something in the way that they have created the relationship with this person that says, I don't mind showing up in this particular way that you may not have had. So you have to create the relationship around, like, let's say communication. What does communication actually look like in the relationship for you? What does adventure actually look like? People are like, I want somebody that's adventurous. And I hate seeing that on dating apps, but that's what everybody says it. I want somebody that's adventurous. And it's like, okay, are you jump out of the plane adventurous? Right. Or are you just like, I want to take a spontaneous trip adventurous? So I think we have to define and think about, what does the relationship look like? What does it feel like? How does my partner treat me? Like, how do I treat them? And create that aspect. And then you're looking for someone that wants to be the partner to create that with you.
I like that. I'm going to have to re-listen to that.
Yeah.
You mentioned apps in there, you know, and the adventurous and thing and whatnot. So what's your take on apps these days? To be on them or not be on them, or is there some sort of middle ground?
I think you have to be on them. That's where most people are. I have my clients, we're always on at least one app. The problem is everybody's on all of the apps and you can't be on all of them. So I would say find the app that you enjoy the most, that maybe you've been the most successful on, and use that one. And you have to take time to build your profile, because most people will be in a rush to build their profile and then they never look at it again. The only thing that they change are pictures. And it's like, that's cool, but how have you grown as a person? Like, what did you set your preferences to? So you have to really go in and use your dating app like a resume and update it when things come to light. But I don't think we can get away from dating apps, because it gives us an opportunity to connect with people that we may not have connected with in person. And we live in a world where people can work remote, and people can work anywhere, and people can move anywhere. And so I think the apps will give you the opportunity to meet someone at a distance that has the ability to do that you wouldn't necessarily meet in your town, especially if you live in a small town with a very small queer community.
Gotcha. So in thinking of my last year, I was living in Northern California, and I was on Tinder and Grindr, and I noticed two different things with these particular apps, at least in this town. On Tinder, I would match with people and maybe even get one or two messages in, but oftentimes, like, it was just very, very quiet. You'd match with someone, and then I'm always fine with sending the first message. Yeah. I don't care. Let's get this thing going. Yep. So I would make a joke, or if they do have a filled out bio, I love those, because then I have something to play off of, and I would address that. And I just wouldn't get responses. But if I fired up Grindr, I could get responses pretty quickly, and it seemed like people were a lot more active on that app. But I would always tell them, listen, I know it's Grindr. I'm not ignorant as to where we are, but I'd really like to meet you first for you name it. Let's go bowling. Let's play billiards. Let's go to the movies. Let's do something other than sit across the table from each other and quiz each other and then decide if then we want to go have sex or not. Yep. But I noticed before I moved to Austin, I got to a rock and a hard place, because with the gay community in Sacramento, their form of a handshake is to have sex, because if we're not good in bed, then there's no reason for us to do anything. But my problem is that I feel like I have to have some sort of love and affection for you before I can show you a good time in the bedroom, which requires us to hang out for a couple hours, to do 2, 3, 4 activities. Yeah. And so I couldn't find, I had multiple guys, 2 or 3, not a ton, who actually chewed me out at the end of a first date when we did not go back home afterwards. And I would say, where'd the confusion happen? I told you I was not going to have sex with you on this date. So it couldn't have been more black and white. So for me, that was sort of why I've been off of them for 9 months, is because I guess I should give Austin a chance first, A, to see if it's different here. But B, I'm wondering if you've had clients who were in that boat of me, where they were just like, they got the hookups and the one night stands out of their system. I think I'm in a dating place now, but if I have to have sex with you to meet you, then I don't think I want to meet you.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think that in your situation, it's definitely different because, like, you know, if we're thinking about lesbians and queer women, we don't really have, like, a hookup app, right? There's, like, her, but it's a little hit or miss, right? So I think in the aspect of Grindr, there is absolutely an expectation. So if you have grown out of, like, I'm not here to have a one-night stand with you, then I would say not the app for you. You said you were using Tinder before?
Yep.
Okay. So then I would go to Tinder, but I would look at the conversations. Like, are you as direct and forward on Tinder as you were on Grindr? Which I know Grindr you have to be, but like we switch how we show up on different apps, right? And so if you're messaging someone on Tinder about like their profile or whatever the case may be, you still want to kind of take that, hey, like, I want to meet you, let's go on a date, let's go bowling, let's do whatever kind of approach the same way that you would on Grindr. But maybe you weren't doing that because you're like, okay, it's Tinder and we're dating and we're this, so let's ease into it instead of just being direct the same way that you would before. So you want to just look at what's the conversations that you're actually having on Tinder, and are you being direct? How are you showing up? What does your profile look like? And then since you're new to Austin, really kind of give Austin the chance. And if you run into no's, that's okay. Or if you tell people no, that's okay, because that's supposed to happen when you're intentionally dating. And what happens is when we start getting no's and we're alone and we're lonely, we're like, oh, I'm never going to find anybody. So then we get off the apps, or we stop going out, or we stop doing this, or we stop doing that. And it's like, nope, that's what it's supposed to happen. So start to celebrate every single no that you have to give or every single no that you get, because you know that person is not the one for you.
That's definitely how I approach guests for the podcast, and it's been such a refreshing way to look at life. Of just, okay, person ABC said no for whatever reason, they just weren't supposed to be on here, whether they knew it or what. You know, it just, no's don't bother me anymore. Same thing with my day job with recruiting, is because I just know that this is sort of the universe telling us that this isn't meant to be, and I need to lean into that instead of mentally flogging myself thinking, what did I do wrong, or what is it about me that turned them off, or what's wrong with my podcast?
Yes.
And you know,
that's the thing about it. We don't do that in any other area, but we do it in dating, and we beat ourselves up, and we're like, how come they don't like me? Like, what's wrong with me? And we start to go to work on ourselves with not knowing that a lot of times when people respond, it has everything to do with them. Everything to do with them. And so like but it's hard to kind of not make it personal, because that rejection feels very much like it's you. And so, you know, I have to do this in matchmaking. When people go on a date and they don't want to see the other person, I ask for feedback, but I don't give the feedback if it's just a preference for them, or if it was something going on with them, right? If someone's like, oh, it felt like a friend, and I'm like, okay, did you flirt? Did you try to do this? Did you try to do that? And they're like, no, I just was a feeling or whatever. And I'm like, okay, great. So then I go to my client. I'm like, hey, it was just a no, right? So we're going to move on to the next one. I don't give them all this feedback about how it felt like a friend and how it all that, because that had to do with the other person. It doesn't have to do with them personally. And so I think we have to be better at celebrating when people tell us no, because when we don't, you know, we lose, like, we go to work on ourselves and we start to change who we are, and we're not the same when we go out there and date. Yeah.
I guess, one way you could look at it is, if that person had said yes, would you have wanted to spend the next 2 years in a terrible relationship?
Yeah, yes.
Just agony and arguing and cheating on each other, or whatever bad thing would have happened if you move forward.
That's why people have to have requirements. What I call requirements, a lot of people call these like non-negotiables, but you have requirements because that's how you start vetting, right? That's how you start the vetting process, with your requirements. And if people are not making it past the app, or they don't make it past the first date, then that's okay, right? Because if these things are missing in a relationship, it's not going to work anyway. And it's better for you to find that out after a date or on the app versus finding that out 6 months down the road, and you're looking at this person like, how did you get here? Like, who are you? I have no clue who you are. And that is what happens a lot of times.
Interesting.
Yeah. So tell me, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I want to dig in. So tell me about like the last conversation that you had on Tinder.
So actually, I gave you a little white lie. In January, I jumped on Bumble for about a month, and I did get 3 dates out of it.
Okay.
What was your original question? I'm sorry. What was my last experience on an app?
Yeah. Yeah.
So so one of the dates we went to a comedy club. And as you know, I think most comedy clubs, there's like a cocktail table and you're sitting side by side because in that way you're looking up at the stage. And so every time the comedian made a joke, the guy I was with would turn around and make eye contact with me, and he'd start like laughing hysterically. And it sort of just creeps me out a little bit because I thought, if every time he laughs in this relationship, it's going to be this like very weird, direct, non-breaking eye contact, I don't know if I can hang. And so I'm sort of registering like, is this a deal breaker for me of the eye contact while laughing for 30 seconds? But then afterwards, he said, you're new to Austin, right? And he was bigger than me. He was probably 2 or 3 inches taller than me, probably had another 20, 30 pounds on me. And I said, yeah, I'm new to Austin. And he said, have you been to 6th Street yet? And I said, no. What's on 6th Street? And he was like, well, we're two pretty big guys, and I think we could handle ourselves in a fight. So let's go get drunk and fuck some shit up.
Oh,
and I was like,
flag.
It's like, wait. So then I went on a quest of asking like 7, 8, 9 people, not dates, but just like people around Austin. Is this a thing in Austin where like on like fights break out on 6th Street? And everyone said yes. So I was like, all right, avoid 6th Street. Noted. So I didn't talk to him again. The other second date, we did end up going to a restaurant, and he brought up sex every 2 minutes. And and also I felt a little bit catfish because, he looked much different than in his pictures, which was not necessarily a deal breaker. I just didn't have a good time. So I thought, maybe give him a second shot, but then I just decided no. And then the third one, we went to the movies together, and then because it is the movie, so you're not really doing anything, I asked him if we could grab a drink or a meal or do anything else. He said he had to go. Hit him up about 10 days later, invited him to a hockey game, and he said something like, LOL hockey. And I thought, is he like mocking hockey?
It's like, you don't like hockey?
So then I hit him up one more time, 7 to 10 days later, invited him out again. I was like, hey, would you like to meet up? Your call on what we do. And he never answered me. So I thought, okay, so maybe to your point, a preference thing. He didn't enjoy our time at the movies. Fine, whatever. I never texted him again.
Yeah, I got you. What is the criteria for you? Like, what do you need to know about someone before you get off of the app to meet them in person, to know that you want to meet them in person?
That's a good question. Because I try to move it off the app pretty quick. So obviously looks is one, but I know that before we even share a single word. Usually it just depends. I do look for them if they ask questions back. So if I'm getting a lot of closed-ended answers, it's hard for me to make a determination. Usually that they have... I hope this doesn't sound funny, but they have a job or in school. Like or like there has to be a thing. You can't just be like sitting at home. You know, what are you up to? What do you do with your life? I just look for rapport, really. If I'm having fun and we're both flirting a little bit and we're both sending some jokes or maybe some memes and there's just like good chemistry, I'm the kind of person where I'm like, let's just meet, because I feel like in 5 minutes we can determine if this should move forward to something or not.
Got you. So what I want you to start doing is thinking about one big thing that you have to have in a relationship, right? So right off the top of your head, what's the thing that you think about?
That they exercise.
Okay.
Could be anything. It doesn't have to be my form of exercising, but are you going to the gym? Are you going on a bike ride? Like, what are you doing to keep your body healthy?
Okay. So then, can you usually tell that from people's profiles though?
Sometimes, most of the time.
Okay, so choose something that you can't necessarily tell from somebody's profile, that you know that you absolutely have to have in a relationship for it to work.
Is this always difficult for people?
It
is. Or do
is.
most people have an answer pretty quick?
Nope, it's always really difficult because these are the things that we don't think about. right? Because we're looking for traits, we don't think about what do we actually need in relationships for them to work. So if you don't know that, what I recommend you doing is looking at your most significant relationships. This includes parents, siblings, cousins you're close to, coworkers, whatever, your best friends, all of that, and your dating history, and think about what worked in that relationship, what didn't work. Are y'all still together? Are you friends? Whatever. Why are you still friends? And then inside of that, you'll start to see your requirements. You'll start to see the things that you absolutely have to have in relationships, because when you can do that and you have your requirements, now you can start breaking some things down. Like, you can tell if someone has gone to the gym. You can tell rapport based on how they're texting back. But maybe you can't really necessarily tell their communication. Always use that one. So let's say communication. So you can ask a question, an action-based question on the app, and to where they will tell you what they have done or what they will do. And then based on that answer, you can go, okay, is this somebody that I want to go on a date with? Right? Because we and it doesn't have to be anything big, right? It could be like something in the realm of communication, right? But if they're able to answer that, depending on the answer and depending on what you actually want in a relationship, will determine if you want to go on a date with that person. So this is just a more intentional vetting process than what we're doing right now. But most people go, oh, they're cute, they look like they work out, cool, we're texting back and forth, and then they'll go on a date with them. But you got to find out at least one big requirement before you go on a date with them.
So I don't know if this will count,
okay,
or what you'll think of this, but as you were describing like what I see in my friends that works, one of the days that I felt really lonely was the prior day. I have a neighbor who also works remote. I do as well. And he hit me up and he's like, do you want to have a day where we get out of our houses and go work at Barnes & Noble? So we walked our dogs together, dropped off the dogs, packed up our bags, went to Barnes & Noble, went to the Cheesecake Factory for lunch, went back to Barnes & Noble. The whole time, even though we worked two separate jobs, we were talking about our coworkers, things we were dealing with, fires we were putting out.
Yep.
Then we came back, walked our dogs, hung out on the porch and drank a couple of beers, talked a little bit more about the day, and then he went home. And the next day I was thinking, that is what I would love in a significant other, is not necessarily like that, repeating that exact day, but just like the companionship. And even just like one thing and this might count as a requirement as well. There's for example, a bass player that I went to a show recently and found him incredibly attractive. One of the things I loved about him was that he was smiling the entire time he was on stage. And you can tell like this guy is in his element. He's having fun. Like, even if he's straight, it wasn't like even a hot thing. It was just like oh my God, he's just like, he's doing his thing. Like, this is so cool. And he's hot. And so I also think it would be cool if whoever he is, he has found what he's passionate about, and that I could, if it was this guy, for example, if he had ended up being gay and we ended up being boyfriends, I would be more than happy to be going to his shows and supporting him. And I would want him just as excited to know Keita's coming over, and he cleared his afternoon to be on the couch to watch us record. And so we were just like, what I would just want our lives to be just very intertangled, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So the companionship part, absolutely hear that. And so that's something that you can vet for, especially like, because people ask like, well, what do you do? Whatever the case may be. But you can even ask them, how have you spent time, with your partner before previously? Like, what would I see every day from you, right? Just right now in your everyday life. And if they're like, oh, well, I work from home and then, I walk my dog and then I don't do anything. Then you go, okay, but do you get out of the house? Do you have friends? Like, so then you have to look at that piece. And then the other piece is what I hear is just them being passionate in something and then understanding your passion and then the support around it. So first and foremost, you have to like really ask people like, so tell me something that you're really passionate about, whether it's your job or not, but what's the one thing that you want to do for the rest of your life? And so when you ask people that question, they can say maybe playing the guitar. And it's so great when you're in your element. What does that look like? If I'm a fly on the wall, what would I see you doing when you're really in what you love to do? And when you ask questions like that with people, they have to think about it. They have to think and go, well, this is what this is what I'm passionate about. This is what I look like, and this is what it feels like, and it's whatever. And so when you start to ask questions like that, you get a little deeper sense of like who people are, if they're able to open up emotionally, right? Because that requires something to be that vulnerable to talk about the things that you want to talk about. And if someone is open to that, then you have to register, okay, cool, that's somebody that I would want to be in a relationship with. Boom, you get a date. But if someone's like, I don't know, I don't really have a whole lot of passions, or my passion is my work, and I'm at my desk every day, probably not as passionate, or they're probably not as connected to something as they want. So then you might determine that that's not really somebody that you want to go on a date with. Okay. So it really is like digging in. And I love those two things. So when you get back on a dating app, because I recommend you get back on it, get on Bumble, since you've already had, success with that because they led to dates. So get back on that and then start to use those two pieces, that companionship and that passion, to start to vet for someone, to start vetting for people on a deeper level before you actually go on a date with them.
Gotcha. Okay. I guess one question I could even ask for fun to sort of vet them out would be like, if things worked out and we're 6 months into our relationship, what would a day look like with us?
So don't ask that question, because that'll run people away. Because that's like a future focus thing, right? So I would say, if you're looking specifically at the companionship part, to understand what someone will do, you have to ask them what they have done. So I would go more so of like, how did you spend time with your partner previously? Just something along those nature, because people, they're so used to answering that question. When you go, well, it's already 6 months down the road, people start to freak out and they're like, yeah, they're already trying to marry me. And they're already doing that. So it's like, don't hold those questions off, right? Until further on into the dating process. But you can go back and people will tell you what they've done. And even if it's like, oh, well, my partner never wanted to do anything, blah, blah, blah. And then you can say, okay, what does companionship in a relationship actually look like for you now if you didn't get it?
Right.
Okay. So you can use that as a follow-up question, but don't do the us, because then people will freak out.
For sure. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever thought about asking questions about prior partners before, or what that looked like. So I like that.
Yeah. So I would ask about prior relationships and not prior partners, because then people will go on and on and on and on and on about their partners. So be really intentional about asking about the relationship. If they go right to their partner, red flag. Okay. So, yeah, I would be like, so, what did companionship look like in your last relationship? If they go right into, well, my partner didn't want this, or we didn't spend a lot of time together, and start talking about the person, just a little, I would say red flag for sure on that, because they're not connected to the actual relationship and their part and what they want. They're still so concerned about the other person.
Right. Interesting. Mm-hmm. Okay. What else do you want to know?
Well, I want to know when you're going to get back on Bumble.
I could download it tonight or tomorrow.
Great.
Yeah, why not?
Great. So I'm curious why you think that were your profile on Tinder and Bumble the same?
Well, Bumble, so I took sort of a different approach with it, and it usually, so with the most recent Bumble account, I wanted to make a joke just to see if it would land anywhere. And so the first line said something like, looking for a relationship so we can double our income and cut our expenses in half.
Love. Okay.
Just to see if anyone bites.
Okay. That probably made a lot of people nervous.
So then the second line was something like, I'm a recruiter by day, podcaster by night, and would love to do something other than an it wasn't this wordy, but I can't think of it right now. But it was like, can we go out for a non-traditional date, i.e. billiards, bowling, movies, and I listed like 3 or 4 options. And then that's how that's how I had that account set up.
Oh, okay, got you. And then were they responding to the things on your account? Because I have my clients use Hinge a lot, and I know you can directly respond to profiles on or certain pieces on Hinge. I'm not that connected with Bumble. Can you do that on Bumble?
I don't know. Bumble was a swipe right or left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll have to look.
Okay.
I'll have to look because we're going to stay in touch, and I'm obviously going to be like, okay, let me see your profile. I'm going to go through your profile, look at your profile, all that kind of stuff. So, and vet, because dating apps are useful. We just have to know how to use them, and we have to know how, like, the things that we're putting on our profile or the preferences that we're setting, how that's actually restricting people from coming in, and then just kind of, going from there, right? Yeah. But dating apps are beneficial. They are useful. I did have another question for you. I don't remember. Here it is. What's the number one thing you want to feel in your relationship?
What do you mean?
It's deep. We just got deep, everybody.
Well, because I remember when earlier this week on one of your, I don't know if it was your Instagram post, your YouTube, your website, but somewhere you had a video, I think, about, and you also just alluded to it a few minutes ago, about think about your relationships that you would consider strong. Mm-hmm. And so, like, my buddy, before we hit record, we were talking about my buddy Tommy. Mm-hmm. And when I'm around him, he's straight. We were friends from the first time we met each other 9 months ago. We met for professional reasons. It turned into a friendship very quickly. He's supported the pod in various ways. I support his music career in various ways. And when we're together, we recorded an episode as well. And his, I thought, was one of the best from the viewpoint of, I could tell both of us had our guards down completely. And so the rapport was just so natural because we could ask each other anything. We were making fun of each other. We were slamming each other. Yeah. And so if I look at it through the lens of, like, if just I guess maybe that would be my answer to your question, is that find somewhere where we can have all of our barriers down with each other. Mm-hmm. Does that count as an answer?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, do you tend to drop your barrier down before the other person does?
I'm a pretty transparent guy. Yeah. I don't have a lot to hide on a first, second, third date. You could ask me almost anything.
Okay. How has that worked out? Let me rephrase. Who have you attracted by being that person?
Who is in, like, describe their personality or, like, how the date went, or what do you
just mean? Like, describe the people that you have attracted, because there's probably a commonality in everybody that you've attracted.
You think so?
Typically, yes.
Oh.
Yeah, now they might not have looked the same or anything like that, but the way in which they showed up in the relationship with you probably was similar.
So one of my friends in Sacramento, we talk about all of our dates with each other. Mm-hmm. And on the most recent guy before I moved to Austin, she did tell me, she's like, David, you need to stop finding the most broken men in this town and try to fix them. So that's
what I wanted to get to. That's what because you seem like a very, 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 very nice guy. And so I have this thing called the attachment triangle. Okay. And I would place you in the hero position because there's a hero, victim, villain, right, on the triangle. And that, if you're attracting people that are broken, you're in the hero position, right? And what happens a lot of times is in the beginning of the relationship, you probably don't ask for a whole lot. You're probably really understanding. You're probably like, oh, this is not a big deal. I can compromise on this. But when you do that, then you can only attract a certain type of person, because what you're saying is, my voice doesn't really matter, or what I have to say can be put on the back burner. And so it becomes all about the other person and less about you, and standing on that ground. So that's why I ask, like, as far as letting your guard down, you want to look at, like, not saying keep your guard up, but you want to look at what are the things that you need to know first before you let your guard down. Because when you go in all cut open like that with the wrong person, then that's where they tend to take advantage of that.
So for in two follow-up questions. For the triangle,
Yep.
is it okay? I'm trying to think of how to frame this, because there's sort of a little bit of a negative connotation to the victim and the villain. So is it okay to be in any one of those triangles and just know what you need to work on for yourself to appropriately be in that triangle, if that makes sense?
Yeah. So the way the triangle works is all of your relationships are on them until you're present to, like, how you're showing up in each one. And we all move around, and you can be in different places, in different relationships. And I know the villain victim is on that, and I don't want people to get, like, triggered by that. It's really from, like, a hero kind of dynamic, right? I love Superman, so it's like Superman. You have Lois, it's like damsel in distress. So it's really more of that kind of connotation, right? But, like, so for me, when I used to teach, I was the hero in my classroom to my kids. I was the villain to the parents, but I was a victim to my administration, and I was moving all around on it. And so what happens a lot of times is most people are in a hero-victim dynamic. And so the hero, what they do is they want to save the victim from themselves. So instead of allowing them to figure out things for themselves, they'll go, yeah, I can totally do that. So a lot of times they're a yes when they really want to be a no, and they hate to say no to people, and they hate when people are upset with them. So they sacrifice the things that they want and sacrifice themselves to make sure that everybody else around them is happy. The quote-unquote victim, damsel in distress kind of dynamic is they have been conditioned and taught that if you're down, nobody's going to kick you down further, right? so they're always sick, or they don't have enough money, or, you know, there's something that they're always struggling and going through that they need people to, like, help them. Their issue is that they don't know that they have everything inside of them to actually get through the situation that they're getting through. And then villains are just people that have, it's like the kid in school where their parents only came to school, or you only saw them when that kid was in trouble. So they have gotten what they thought is love from just being the bad person, right? This is where a lot of cheaters live, right? Because if you think about it, if you're a cheater, but, like, you end up in the relationship with the person that you cheated on, you still won something, and you're still getting love and affection for it and all of that. So you can move around on the triangle, and a lot of times, you know, so it's not about, like, just staying in one place, but everybody on the triangle needs to learn something about themselves in order to get off of it.
Interesting. You, first off, thank you for the compliment a minute ago about how I seem like a nice guy. I appreciate that. A couple months ago, I had a guest on the podcast, and afterwards we were messaging about some stuff back and forth, and he made a comment to me about how he wishes, he's like, you're such a nice guy. I wish I could be more like you. I'm so mean to everyone, or something. And then it's that the way he worded it, I wish I screenshotted it or something, because it just, like, the way he said it, it almost made it seem like I'm almost too nice of a guy. And then, like, a couple weeks later, I was listening to a podcast, and I took some notes on one of the things they said. And it's that nice guys don't place enough boundaries. They roll over and allow the bad behavior to continue.
Yep.
They don't have a willingness to walk away. The other party resents the nice guy because they feel they have to raise the nice guy. We don't trust a nice person to make good decisions, and therefore see niceness as a weakness. So the question becomes, how do you be kind but also show some assertiveness at the same time?
Yeah, so it's like the dynamic where I said you're a you're a yes when you really want to be a no. Like, that's part of it, is being a no when you want to be a no. And you can do the no, but like someone asks you, can you help me move? You could be like, no, but I can give you some places you can get a U-Haul, or I can see if my friend has a truck. So it's like that. Like how you can be nice is you communicate what's there for you in the most gentle way possible, but you still stand firm in what it is that you want. But see, what happens is, and what's going to happen when you start setting boundaries and you start saying no to people, or you're starting being like, yeah, no, I can't help you with that. Or the number one question I love to ask people is, what are you going to do about that? Because that puts it back on them. When people start doing that, they are going to get upset at you, because they're going to be like, that's not how you would normally act. Like, you're really nice. Like, but you see that in relationships. You can't hold that hero position forever. It's just not possible, because when you start to put yourself on the back burner, what's brewing underneath is resentment. And it'll come up, and then you'll get angry, and then you won't be so nice anymore. But then you feel bad about it, because you're like, God, I was really just trying to be really nice about it, but then they wouldn't let me. And so then you blew up. And so now you're having to deal with the guilt and shame and all that. So what you have to really do is, when someone comes to you and they ask you something, or they want you to do something, you have to pause and go, do I really want to do this? Is this something that I really want to do? And if the answer is no, be a no. Or if, you have to set a boundary with someone, set a boundary with a friend of like, hey, we can't do this thing anymore because it hurts me or whatever. No matter how they react, you still have to set it, because you're not ever going to be able to control them anyway. There's nothing that you can say and do to make someone not have the reaction that is in line with their emotional home. So you just say no, and then, if people get upset, or you set a boundary and people get upset, you just be like, I totally understand you being upset right now. If you want to talk about this at a different time and you have calmed down, we can do that. But this is the boundary, or I'm a no right now. Or if you would like, different assistance, I'm down for blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So that's how you're assertive, but nice all at the same time.
Fair enough. Well, to all of the broken men in Austin, I'm here.
No, you are not. He's no longer available. No longer available for the broken men in Austin at all whatsoever. And here's the thing, right? Like, you're probably going to attract somebody, right, that has issues, and they're gonna need your assistance and all that. But this is where you have to recognize, especially when you that feeling in you, you're like, oh, I just want to help them. When that comes up, the number one question you ask, because they'll start complaining, I'm struggling with this and blah, blah, blah. The number one question you ask is, I'm sorry you're going through that. What are you going to do about it? That's how you get that victim person to get connected to the power within themselves. And if they don't know, you can be like, well, I'm here to brainstorm some things for you when you're ready. But don't go into, you may have all kinds of ideas about how they can fix it.
Yeah.
Right? But it's for them to figure out, and it's for you to allow them to, discover that power within themselves. And when you ask that question, they'll go, oh. And they may say, I don't know. And then you can say, okay, well, what's one thing you see to do? And then they'll maybe get one thing, and then they'll do whatever. Or someone will be like, I don't know, I need somebody to help me. Just help me. And be like, I'm not in a position to help you in that way. But again, I'm here to have a conversation with you to see what can come up.
Yeah. To wrap this up, I will just say, first off, thank you for being here today.
You're so welcome.
This was super fun. You made it really easy. I'm not nervous at all to release any of this, so the whole episode will go live. We're not going to cut anything out.
Yes.
And the last thing I was just going to say to ping off what you said is, I have a couple friends who are in Alcoholics Anonymous, and they have the phrase one day at a time.
Yeah.
And what I really like about what a few of them have shared with me is their whole mentality is, if I try to say I'm not going to drink until I die, I'm probably going to fail. But if I can just make it through today, today, Saturday, it's about 4 p.m. right now. I got about 6 hours till bed. What can I do in just these next 6 hours? And when it comes to solving problems or dating, like, I think sometimes we blow it out of proportion.
Yes.
And it's more of like, what can we just do today? So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to download Bumble. And tomorrow I'll message a few people. And we're just going to take this thing one little bite at a time to not get overwhelmed or anxious or stressed out. Because if you try to solve, sometimes the problem is too big to come to the ultimate solution. But to your point, what can I do today? What behavior and what can I control to start trying to find the solution and then go from there?
Yeah. I like to ask people like what can you do today to be a successful single, right? I think we think about being in a relationship so much that like being single is an opportunity, right? And it's an opportunity for you to embrace yourself and like do the things that you want to do and have fun with the love that is actually surrounding you, because sometimes we're like, oh, I'm by myself and I'm lonely, but we forget about other people. So it's like, be a successful single, like get out there into the world and live your life and have gratitude and embrace the love that's around you.
I love it. Well, thank you for being here. Can you shout out the name of your podcast one more time?
Queer Connections.
Queer Connections.
Yes.
You can find it Spotify,
Everywhere.
Apple, YouTube. It's on all of them. So go give it a listen. If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a 5-star review on Spotify, a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, and subscribe to the YouTube channel so we can spread this super fun conversation to other people who might be struggling with, I'm single, to be on the apps or not on the apps. And I think it was just a fun conversation to tune into for an hour. So help us spread it, everyone. In the meantime, I hope you have a healthy and happy Saturday night, and we'll see you next week. Bye, guys.